In another world, where the king of curses had fallen to the strongest sorcerer of the day.
Woo! Ah! Well, sorry, kid. Looks like I couldn't save you after all. Looks like I really can't save anyone. You know what time it is, don't you? Yeah, I figured. Can't give a man like 10 seconds to mourn, though. You had your 10. Took longer to get here than I expected since that kid wouldn't teleport me. Fine. The question is, does Akari mind if I take you out? I'm not gonna be the one falling today, Mr. Strongest. We'll see about that. What's up, guys? I'm Hunter here, and here we are to do a nice little breakdown. The strongest sorcerer of the modern day versus Kashimo Hajime, the strongest sorcerer of the Edo period, to determine which one of these mighty beasts stands supreme in a battle of the mightiest, based on an assessment of their power, their speed, and their abilities. Which of these two stands supreme? Obviously, in the original timeline, we know like who stands really supreme. Like at the top of the verse, it's Sukuna. But like in terms of the runner-ups, in terms of the other strongest of their respective eras, we are now here to determine who stands supreme. So let's not waste any more time and let's hop right into the first part of this analysis. Their power. What's up, guys? That guy with a pencil here. Fun fact, I do happen to have it on me and keep it on me at all times. And another fun fact, I mean, one of our characters tends to have it on him and keep it on him at all times, but not really. I don't know, like, bro, like, pretty much immediately, and I mean, like, immediately threw it away. Like, the second after he landed, he was like, this thing is useless. And then he immediately threw away the thing he used to have on and keep on him. So they ain't like me for real. I have it on me, and I keep it on me at all times. But the main thing we got to talk about first is the power of these two strongest of their respective periods, and compare them to each other in terms of who is stronger. Now, luckily enough, we do have a perfect comparison, a perfect middle point, a perfect line to draw in terms of both of their power, considering they fight the same person, and only the same person at different stages, but this leads to a very easy comparison for their power. Now, of course, the first man to cover is the strongest of the modern day, Gojo Satoru. Now, obviously, with pretty much all of his, like, attacks, like whatever named attacks, whether it be blue, whether it be red, and especially purple, Gojo Satoru is able to I'm not going to say very easily, but he's able to damage Ryomen Sukuna. Of course, this one is an opener 200% hollow purple, but we see throughout the entire rest of the encounter, any of Gojo's named attacks typically do some amount of damage to Sukuna, no matter what. This is 20 finger full power Sukuna. We see this in numerous occasions. Well, this is kind of cheating. I'm going to talk about the physicals in a second, but I do mainly want to focus on the actual named abilities. We see what the 200% hollow purple ends up doing to Ryomen Sukuna. Well, not 200%. The 200% was at the start of the fight. We see what the not 200% hollow purple does towards the end, where it's able to, well, you know, darn near vaporize Sukuna. And this alternate timeline where Kashimo and Gojo are fighting, we'll just say this did vaporize Sukuna, but this is able to one-tap Maharaga and do extreme lethal amounts of damage to Sukuna. However, one thing to admit, this Sukuna is much more worn down than the Sukuna at the start of the battle, who did tank a 200% hollow purple that was launched from very far away. The potency of hollow purple over distances is kind of, I'm not going to say, like, vague, but, like, we don't really know, like, for him to take this much damage from a 100% may just mean his cursed energy reserves are lower, thus his reinforcement was lower, but he is able to take clear amounts of damage from that. We see he's able to kind of catch the blessed back shots from Ryomen Sukuna himself, in the sense that, you know, like whenever Gojo ends up giving Sukuna the back shots, he does actually feel it. We see this very explicitly in 232, I do believe, where we see Gojo Satoru lunge in. We see right towards the end of this chapter, he's able to not just damage Sukuna a bit through domain amplification with just the initial blast of red, but he's also able to damage Sukuna again and knock him around with the detonated red that goes around the building and hits Sukuna in the back. Notably, you can definitely argue Sukuna's a bit off guard here in comparison. He doesn't use domain amplification or anything, but he does take direct damage from this, and there's no real reason for him to have dropped his Curse Energy Reinforcement all too much, even if he thinks the red has already detonated and he doesn't have to worry about that attack anymore. The fact that he does take damage from this just shows everything that Gojo does damage to Sukuna in terms of his named attacks. We even see something as simple as one of about, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 whole blues come together and converge, and while most of them miss, we see another blue come around and actually take a chunk out of Sukuna's side. So like, everything that Gojo does that's named hurts, like various degrees. So in terms of just like output and blast, we do know for a fact that Gojo Satoru can harm Ryomen Sukuna with his raw power in terms of just his named abilities. And we also know this does kind of continue to basic attacks when they're infused with certain things. Obviously, this doesn't really count because this is a Black Flash, a 2.5, not multiplier, but like raised to 2.5 power amplifier. So this doesn't really count, but we do see Gojo without Black Flashes is able to do enough lethal damage to Sukuna while in his domain, while they presumably have the same level of amp. Oh, not that one. We see, presumably when the two have similar levels of amps, they're able to trade hands for the most part, and then whenever Gojo does really feel like doing something a little bit lethal, he's able to make Sukuna flinch a little bit. The question is, though, do you think Sukuna is able to lower her durability? Because Gojo, towards the end of the battle, does clarify that he believes Sukuna was holding back to certain degrees. If you think that was stats, it's kind of hard to quantify, like, how much was Sukuna just, like, lowering his guard at certain times? Maybe the only reason Gojo's able to damage him is because Sukuna lowers his guard, and things like, I don't know, these two interacting and Gojo burying his fist into Sukuna's chest and knocking chunks of his face off. And I think the most prominent one is right here, where he just punches Sukuna so hard that he does end up breaking his domain. It goes to show that when he amps himself with his blue punches and increases his speed and stuff like that, he's actually able to do good amounts of damage to 20-finger Sukuna. Question is, how much do you think Sukuna's holding back, if at all? If you think he lowered his durability throughout the entire fight, I know there are some people who believe that, so I'm just going to address it here. If you believe that Ryomen Sukuna was lowering his durability, he was getting punched here and now, just for the memes, and to enjoy the fight, I guess, then maybe you don't say Gojo's able to damage him, but I personally don't think he was holding back durability or anything like that. So he's just able to damage 20-finger Sukuna, who should be relatively healthy. Typically, whenever he damages him with either his main attacks, when they're named attacks, such as blues, reds, or purples, and or, his fists, which are wrapped typically in blue, he does do damage to Sukuna, which is very, very good. And the same thing does sort of, kind of, to a lesser degree, apply to hajimekashimo against a admittedly much weaker Sukuna. We see that this hajimekashimo, upon the release of Mythical Phantom Beast Amber, is able to draw some juice, draw some droplets out of Sukuna with regular bang bang. And we see that, unfortunately, his major attacks, or at least not necessarily a named attack of his, but an attack that involves him manipulating sound waves, doesn't seem to do too much damage to an already extremely damaged and Giga Fatigue Sukuna, which is kind of unfortunate for that attack. That's just that attack alone. We do get to see that, once again, he is able to draw some juice with his regular punches, and unfortunately we just don't know about Kashimo's other attacks in their raw power, because, at least relative to Sukuna, the main comparison point between the two, mainly because of what happens with every single one of Kashimo's supposedly more lethal attacks. Like, notably, this electromagnetic wave that he fires here may have been able to harm Sukuna, but Sukuna dodges it. And we see in 238, when Sukuna fully incarnates, unfortunately, Kashimo just never lands a hit with any of his electromagnetic waves. They keep getting grabbed or misdirected or consistently weaved and stuff like that. So we don't know how they would interact, especially with true form Heian Body era Sukuna. So, like, it's a little bit hard with that. And there's another character that we do know what Kashimo's quote-unquote highest attack does damage to in the Lightning Bolt, and that would be Hakari Kinji. We do see numerous times out there interactions that Hakari is able to be damaged by Kashimo, but this kind of goes into a question of, like, okay, sure, these lightning bolts are able to tear through Hakari Kinji and do lethal amounts of damage while he's in Jackpot or near the end of Jackpots or doing all these crazy next level things. We literally see in the first of their encounters, his arm casually gets blown right off by a lightning bolt to the point where Hakari's forced to regenerate massively. But if you're in the camp that Hakari's durability is just trash, then this doesn't matter. nothing is more impressive than a few droplets off of 20-finger Sukuna, even if that Sukuna's omega crazy next level fatigued. So if you had to ask me who has superior attack potency, who has more power behind their hits, I'm gonna end up going with Gojo. It's mainly just because we don't necessarily have a consensus on whether or not Hakari's actually crazy bulky, or if he's just trash and only relies on RCT. His durability is garbage, but his RCT is really, really good. Or if he's like Yuta in the sense that he has large amounts of curse energy, a better base body, and crazy amounts of reinforcement, it's just that his opponents are really, really strong. If you go with the latter interpretation, I still say Gojo would probably get the edge in comparison to Kashimo, mainly because no matter how bulky this Hakari is, he's most likely not as bulky as Ryomen Sukuna, who's able to do things like eat 200% hollow purples, like survive in 100% unlimited hollow purple. Like, there are things that Gojo does against Sukuna that Sukuna is able to survive that are still more impressive than what Kashimo does in terms of just raw power and raw output. Whether it be with named attacks, whether it be with regular punches, whether regular kicks, he's able to do crazy amounts of damage to Sukuna, who has more health than the Kashimo that did damage to Sukuna ever did. Like, unfortunately, Kashimo just doesn't do that many numbers, even to a crazy RCT-less, crazy low output brain damage Sukuna. We just never see him land the hit. Some people assume that Sukuna maybe was forced to block this lightning bolt or got hit by it. We just have no clarification for that. I think this is something we're gonna have to wait to see until the anime adapts it to figure out what happens here. Some people assume that Sukuna whipped out Kamutoke and like blocked the lightning bolt here, or that he face tanked the lightning bolt and then incarnated anyway, or that he took lethal damage from the lightning bolt and then was forced to incarnate. There's so much vagueness surrounding this one panel that I still don't think it's enough to put Kashimo above Gojo in terms of raw power. I just don't really see the vision there. But of course, that's just power. Let's hop right into speed. So speed is where it kind of gets rocky, but not necessarily, because once again, we do have the same comparison point. Just the question is, how much do these two comparison points overlap with how damaged that the Kashimo who's able to tag and keep up with Sukuna, or a extremely damaged Sukuna, versus the full health Sukuna that Gojo's able to keep up with and sometimes outpace. Because unfortunately, Kashimo, even in Mythical Phantom Beast Amber, even with all that juicy extra good stacked onto him, he never really has a feat like this on someone who's at full health. Notably, I will give Kashimo this. He is directly able to tag a Omega Giga Fatigue Sukuna, one who was admittedly fast enough and powerful enough to launch a spatial slash to bisect Satoru Gojo. All Satoru Gojo was all 4 black flashes. But we do see that outside of these couple hits that Kashimo actually manages to land on him, such as the 1-2 combo here, the electric scream here, and the other sucker punch right here, we just don't see anything else really land, and Sukuna is still able to react to him. We see Sukuna is caught off guard by Kashimo's sudden increase in speed here, so he gets 1-2 comboed. Sukuna recovers, is forced to block the screen, but doesn't take too much damage from it. And then we see, at point-blank range, Kashimo loads up an attack, launches it, Sukuna weaves it. But the thing is, immediately, he doesn't weave I think this is almost a pump fake or a scream. I can't tell because it doesn't have the same explosive effect as this initial scream here. But either he screams at Sukuna to catch him off guard, maybe disorient him a little bit, and then lands another hit. Meanwhile, this is, once again, an Omega crazy, no RCT, I'm out of all other means to restore my flesh Sukuna, versus Satoru Gojo, who's able to, at bare minimum, just go relative with Sukuna. Even when Sukuna has an 120% domain amp, while Gojo just doesn't. He's in Sukuna's domain. However, this is a case where I can fully see an argument for where Sukuna's holding back stats. Because, like, he could just be holding back speed, and he could be trying to press Gojo here, but at the same time, I don't know if I want to get beat around in my own domain, but that's neither here nor there. We do see the two are able to go relative to certain degrees, and Gojo, at times, numerous times throughout the battle, is actually able to outpace and keep up with Gojo. Well, Gojo's able to outpace and keep up with Gojo. Gojo is able to outpace and keep up with Sukuna to the point where the moment he gets his technique back, he actually is able to fully catch Sukuna off guard and just the pattern continues numerous times throughout their battle, even to the point where both get their 120% domain amps. Gojo is, I wouldn't necessarily say leading the battle to a certain degree, but Sukuna is never able to really outpace Gojo in the way that Gojo is able to outpace him, if you know what I'm saying. We do see Gojo acknowledge here that Sukuna is doing weird stuff throughout the fight, and once again, you just go into the argument of, well, maybe Sukuna's holding back speed a whole bunch, but then you would have to somehow substantiate that, okay, this Sukuna who's holding back speed is going to be slower than this, not that Sukuna, not that Sukuna either, but this Sukuna who's crazy damaged and doesn't have any real expectations for Kashimo. You have to somehow argue that this Sukuna right here, missing a hand, missing a bit of his foot, and 2 eyes, is somehow faster than this Gojo. This Sukuna, who is going head to head with Gojo and getting tagged and getting beaten up in domain clashes and stuff like that. Like, you would have to substantiate that. And I'm not sure how you do that. There is one way, though. There is one way you can give Kashimo a definitive speed advantage, depending on how you interpret certain things. Because everyone knows at this point, we see in 236 that Gojo Satoru was sliced in half. Bro was reduced to atoms. Well, no, he was not the Infinity Stones. He was not literally reduced to atoms, but he was cut down a peg. Maybe a bit more than a peg, maybe like half the ladder. But with that being the case, he was cut down, while Sukuna was very clearly cooked, like on the verge. And notably, it's unfortunate, but we know Gege did not forget about the spark or the ability to read cursed energy or anything being released. We know Gege didn't forget about that mechanic in universe because he literally mentions it this very same chapter. We see the occurrence of cursed energy is when it wells forth from a sorcerer immediately before they activate a cursed technique. It directly precedes the activation of a major technique, like domain expansion or a can't-miss attack. Despite efficiency with cursed energy, Gojo is no different, especially when not using hollow purple. Sukuna determined from the cursed energy chant and the scale of cursed energy that the occurrence that would follow would be cursed technique reversal red. So, this mechanic is still a thing that is fully acknowledged by Gege in 235. And Gojo Satoru, by the end of this chapter, is tweaking off 4 black flashes. This man is not off 1, he's not off 2, he's off like 15. This guy is running on 12. Like, we have no idea what's going through this man's head. He's looking dead at Sukuna, dead at him. His ears, while they're healing, are presumably still functioning. His output's been restored. The only thing he likely still has is that brain damage. So that's the only thing you can maybe argue. But this on the verge Sukuna, who's looking directly at Gojo, and Gojo who's looking directly at him with the 6 eyes, and Gojo who should still be off 15 right now, should be paying attention, and he still gets cleaved in half. To the point where, like, he's just gone immediately by Spatial Slash, by the Deadly Dismantle, by the Amp Dismantle. And based on how Sukuna does it in 238, it appears that Sukuna had to do something. Unless he was, like, whispering so quietly under his breath that this was unhearable, he went Dragon Scales, Repulsion, Paired Falling Stars. Remember, he did this to Gojo when he still had 1 mouth. So, like, he had to be Oguriba, Oguriba, Oguriba under his breath right here. So Gojo, with the 6 eyes, looking dead at Sukuna, did not notice, or was just straight up perception bliss by this dismantle that ended up, reducing him to atoms, slicing him in half. But Kashimo is able to somewhat dodge it. He loses half his hand to this dismantle. Now, you could argue that's a superior speed feat to anything Gojo does, because, once again, Gojo wasn't able to dodge this Deadly Dismantle. Well, Kashimo was. And if we go with the assumption that the Deadly Dismantle does require the chant into the startup time, it doesn't necessarily matter. Because Kashimo is in the midst of firing an attack, an electromagnetic wave that moves at light speed. He was in the midst of firing an attack, was screaming at the same time. Sukuna warns him somehow over that, speaks out the whole chant, and launches out Dismantle. And Kashimo is still able to dodge most of it. So you want to make the argument that Kashimo's faster off that alone? I can see the vision, but once again, just due to, I'm not even going to say because of, but due to a sheer lack of relativity of this Sukuna, we literally never see Mythical Phantom Beast Amber land a single hit on this full health, full body restored Sukuna. and we see him struggle to land hits on this Sukuna without either A, catching him off guard by a transformation and massive increase in speed, or B, staggering him first with another attack, and then hitting him with another one. Meanwhile, Gojo's just numerous times against a much healthier Sukuna, able to go head-to-head, exchange blows, go bar for bar in terms of speed. I'm going to give Gojo the edge in speed. Even if Gojo is holding, or no, Sukuna was holding back speed stats too. Even with all that, I don't think that one warning / dismantle, being able to mostly dodge that, is a better speed feat than anything that Gojo did. I don't see the vision. Gojo went better up against a healthier, more full power Sukuna with less brain damage than the one that Kashimo went up against, and proceeded to fail to land a hit on the moment Sukuna incarnated. So I'm going to have to give the edge to the main man, Gojo Satoru, in terms of speed, but I can see the argument. Like, don't get me wrong, I can see the dismantle dodging argument, even if I think it's still a little wishy-washy. But with that being the case, we have one more category to cover, and that would be abilities. So, luckily enough, these two characters, despite being extremely powerful, inarguably both top 5 characters in the series in terms of overall abilities, their abilities are shockingly enough not that deep, or at least their bags aren't too deep, especially considering the bags that they appear to use in character based on both of their final battles against their respective opponent in Ryo and Sukuna. For Satoru Gojo, one of his more major abilities is Blue, and all that entails. Blue is what facilitates his teleportation, where we see he starts from this far away, then immediately appears right in front of Sukuna. Then, of course, we see Blue also facilitate kind of everything else he does, from his Evoli ability, which makes it so that Sukuna cannot actually touch him without using something akin to domain amplification. This facilitates Gojo's ability to use telekinesis, manipulating the space around him to certain points and throwing Sukuna through multiple buildings, and by proxy Kashimo through multiple buildings through the usage of Blue. We see that he even wraps his punches in Blue, which is what allows for certain phenomena to hurt a whole lot more than one would conventionally think they'd hurt, to the point where these black flashes are able to do whiteout damage to Sukuna for half an instant and force Sukuna to summon Mahoraga, because it appears, I don't know, at least this is my interpretation of it. I wouldn't get mad if people have a different interpretation. I think every time Sukuna is temporarily incapacitated, Mahoraga gets summoned. Because those are the main times it happens. When he was incapacitated by Limited Void, Mahoraga auto summons. When he seemingly, some people don't think he's knocked out here, and I'm fine with that. He doesn't have to be knocked out. His eyes went white. That can mean a whole bunch of different things. But the moment he seemingly enough gets a little bit incapacitated, Mahoraga auto summons. But that being the case, we see he's able to wrap his punches in Blue to the point where they do a lot more lethal damage. And of course, he just has generic Blue, which are these blue spears that have gravitational effects that draw things into them, and they can be manipulated by Gojo, and they can also linger, which is very, very interesting. And they're able to, damage things they come in contact with, as we see one tear straight through Sukuna. So that's Blue. Then we have Red. Red is a lot more simpler in its application and its utility. It's kind of just a push. Like, I wish we could say more about Red, but he doesn't seem to use it as creatively or as massively as he does Blue. He very particularly just uses Red as kind of a bang, and he just launches it out at people. It is able to repel things, anything it comes in contact with, and its detonation can be delayed. We see this Red sort of just spiritually bounces off of Sukuna, whirls around the entire building, and then proceeds to give Sukuna the legendary Crimson Backshots of Liberation, which does send Sukuna flying a little bit, but that's about all Red can do. It kind of just boom, and then cooked. Then, for the other major ability of Satoru Gojo, it would obviously be his Infinity. This seems to be a subsection of Blue, though, just based on how Mahoraga adapts to it. So this kind of just makes Gojo not untouchable, because you do have methods to get past it, such as domain amplification and stuff like that. But the main thing that Infinity does is allows for interactions like this, where essentially, even though Dismantle is an extremely powerful attack, it just bounces off of Gojo's Infinity. Or he dodges it here. It's hard to tell. But I believe it just bounces off his Infinity and goes. Because the Infinity just creates this infinite distance between you and Satoru Gojo, slowing down all your attacks to the point where they will never actually reach him. It would take them an infinite amount of time to reach him, and obviously he's not going to stand there for that long. This is commonly referred to as his Involi ability. It just makes him really, really annoying to touch. You can touch him. There are definitely hard counters to the Infinity, such as domain amplification, which allows you to bypass it by simply turning it off. You have Shrine, I say specifically Shrine, but realistically, any domain that has a sure hit effect, because the sure hit transcends the infinity, as the attacks do not exist until they appear on top of you, like literally spawn in on top of you. That's the other counter. And anytime Gojo does something post a domain, even if for a short time period, he does not have the infinity active, because even he experiences post-domain fatigue, where his technique shuts down. Well, otherwise, he has the technique on 24/7. And of course, the final big bad attack that Gojo Satoru has access to is Hollow Purple. He just be flying that bad boy around. The only issue is this does have slow startup relative to a lot of his other attacks, where you can kind of just point a finger and bang, or just put his hands out and boom, you can get covered or surrounded by blues. Hollow Purple does require some sort of build up and startup time, to the point where Gojo Satoru does not use it conventionally unless he has a wide opening to do it on somebody. It is extremely fast though, but not fast enough to the point where characters, well, I mean, kinda. Sukuna reacts to it just barely at the start of the battle in 222. He's able to throw his hands up at the last second in order to react to it. And he does somewhat react to it when he's fighting up against Gojo in 235. He does somewhat, like, you see him look at it, and then he's able to tank it well enough, but he's not able to escape from it. Unlimited Hollow is a massive, unrestricted variation of Hollow Purple, where it kind of just fires everywhere. Very, very effective for catching multiple opponents, but, like, in comparison, Gojo would typically use regular Hollow Purple, as the issue with Unlimited Hollow is that it can even damage himself through his infinity, simply because it seemingly is a mix of his abilities, including the infinity. So, Gojo Satoru. Simple, clean, powerful kit. Oh wait, one last thing. Let's talk about the domain expansion. Now, I'll admit, I'm kind of soft banning it. Like, if you couldn't tell by the intro, I'm kind of soft banning Unlimited Void for a reason you'll find out, but I'll just cover it so we can talk about it in the battle section, and why I do kind of want to soft ban it from this battle due to a lack of ability that his opponent just apparently doesn't have, or doesn't appear to have, unless you make some certain assumptions. The Unlimited Void allows for him to overload the brain with information, which causes a temporary paralysis, but this attack does also affect the soul. We see this is even effective on characters as powerful as Ryota and Sukuna, who, the moment they get hit by a couple seconds, we see apparently just the difference of 0.01 seconds in terms of activation allowed Sukuna to be staggered for just long enough that his domain would collapse, and then apparently only being exposed to Unlimited Void for 10 seconds is what led to Ryoma and Sukuna receiving so much brain damage that he could not properly activate his Malevolent Shrine, and he took lethal amounts of damage in less than 10 seconds. So Unlimited Void, very, very powerful. It's a stun lock, sure hit, attacks the soul, all that good, juicy, scrumdiddlyumptious stuff. So let's move over to the other major combatant in this battle, Kashimo Hajime. And his, I'm not going to say less than impressive kit, because it is still very, very good. It's just, unfortunately, by the time we get to see it fully in action, it doesn't do as much as it can against his specific opponents. We see that Kashimo Hajime does, in fact, have an Electric Cursed Energy trait. This is what Panda noticed. Sorry, I had to say its name. But with this is where we see Panda notice that, oh, wait a minute, his cursed energy is electrified. Electrified. That's not a word. But as Panda says, it's like Fushiguro's new way. This player's cursed energy is like a current of electricity. They're in a constant state of electrification. In other words, it's impossible to defend against. So essentially, Kashimo does always, whether he's in base or Mythical Phantom Beast Amber, he does always have Electric Cursed Energy, which does typically cause a stun effect, but we see if you're at a certain level of power, the stun effect, I'm not going to say is irrelevant, but it kind of is relevant, as it gets reduced down to a tingle against Sakari Kinji, who has unlimited Cursed Energy, and we even see when the two start battling in a domain where Hikari doesn't actually have unlimited Cursed Energy, he's back to his base self, the stun lock doesn't seem to matter. Long story short, the trait of electromagnetism or electrification that comes with Kashimo's curse technique kind of matters less the stronger you are. This is to the point where Sukuna doesn't even mention it. Like, we see that Sukuna, while extremely low on cursed energy, has so little cursed energy he can't even perform RCT anymore. He gets punched directly in the face. Like, a lot. Okay, admittedly, like 3 times, but still, like, a lot in terms of, like, direct physical contact with Kashimo. And he doesn't even note the cursed energy trait. Like, it's that irrelevant. And this is, once again, a Sukuna so low on cursed energy, he's actually forced to just genuinely incarnate instead of continuing to use RCT. So, like, the cursed energy trait in of itself probably wouldn't do too much against Satoru Gojo, just considering he should have more cursed energy than base Hikari. Am I saying Kashimo's curse energy trait is so trash it only affects fodder like Panda? I'm not going to explicitly say that. But I'm also going to not explicitly say that. But with that being the case, we do get to see that this electric curse energy trait doesn't just come with the temporary stun effect, it also can produce lightning bolts. Sure, hit lightning bolts outside of domains, meaning these things will land no matter what after he places the charges. The minimum amount of charges we've seen are like, I think like 3. I think it is 3. In this battle in particular, the least amount of charges that we see Kashimo need to land in order for his curse technique to pop off appropriately is 3 charges. Or 3 particular hits, because we see that the charges are specifically placed when he punches somebody. So he lands 2 hits on Sukuna right here. Then he lands a 3rd hit right here. And then a bolt comes out. So at least in Mythical Phantom Beast Amber, he just needs 3 hits to land a non-miss attack. A can't miss attack, lightning bolt, which will do lethal amounts of damage. Once again, is able to tear directly through Hakari Kinji to the point where even while he's in jackpot, it's able to do nothing to resist the almighty power of Kashimo's lightning bolt, which is very, very impressive. As, you know, Hakari Kinji should be bulky, but if you think his durability is trash, once again, the lightning bolt isn't all too impressive. Then he also gains the functions of electricity in his battle against Satoru Gojo. Not his battle against Satoru Gojo, though he will be having a battle against Satoru Gojo soon enough. He specifically gets the traits of electricity and is able to mold his body to do anything of the sort. This can produce, you know, electromagnetic waves, which are able to, you know, irradiate and vaporize objects the moment they come in contact with them. Unfortunately, we don't see this effect. We're just told about it because Sukuna dodges all of them. But with that being the case, he's able to do that. He's able to produce sonic screams that are able to destabilize by vibration. Though admittedly, they don't seem to have too much of an effect on Sukuna himself. But once again, it's Sukuna. Of course, it wasn't going to have too much of an effect. And unfortunately, that's kind of it. He gets faster and stronger because he has increased motor functions due to the nature of his electricity. But outside of that, he doesn't really have any other abilities. And we never really get to see any of his new abilities in Mythical Phantom Beast Amber work the way they're supposed to work, because he's fighting Ryo and Sukuna and he couldn't be allowed to do much against them. But still, these are very powerful abilities. These are 2 very powerful characters with very unique movesets. So now the question is, who would win? Well, let's find out. As you could likely guess, the big issue, because I didn't mention one ability, and trust me, that was purposeful. The big issue that Hajimekashimo has, particularly in a battle against Gojo Satoru, is that he cannot hit him. He just can't hit him. And this is bad, because the reason I say he cannot hit him is because it's never confirmed whether or not Kashimo Hajime has domain amplification. We know he has Hollow Wicker Basket, something I didn't mention because I was banning domains from this battle. But I'll mention it now. Hollow Wicker Basket is the ability to negate the sure hit effects of sure hit domains. Though, considering it seems lesser than domain amplification and seems comparable to simple domain, and we know neither of those work against super complicated sure hits such as Unlimited Void, if Gojo were to just open Unlimited Void at the start of this battle, Kashimo loses. Remember, Kashimo is struggling to tag a Giga Omega fatigued Ryomen Sukuna, who's missing an arm and, you know, 2 eyeballs and is so low on curse energy he can't even RCT. And then you have Gojo Satoru over here landing Unlimited Void on Sukuna for less than 10 seconds and giving him so much brain damage he can't actually open his domain. And realize, if Maharaga ain't pop out the Shadow Realm on Sukuna right then and there, then Sukuna would have been experiencing Unlimited Void for much more than 10 seconds. Like, as long as Gojo needed him to. And Kashimo Hajime has no hard counter to that. That's why I set up this battle in the context that it very specifically happened after the Gojo versus Sukuna fight. Because any other context before that, Kashimo gets annihilated. Because all it takes is 1 Unlimited Void. He has no counters to that. Even if you think that Hollow Wicker Basket, because it's stated separate from Simple Domain and separate from Domain Implication, that it's on a comparable level, that would require Kashimo somehow reacting in time, unless he was sitting there with Hollow Wicker Basket activated. It would require him reacting in time to activate Hollow Wicker Basket before the sure hit lands. It would land before Kashimo could activate Hollow Wicker Basket, and that would immediately annihilate him. That would just paralyze him, and then Gojo could literally do whatever he wants to him. He could do what he played to do to Sukuna, just rip out his heart, lungs, crush his skull, like do anything like that. So Unlimited Void kind of makes the battle just a bit too easy. So we're gonna hard ban that because it's a 2 auto level win con. Unfortunately, Kashimo doesn't have a domain. He doesn't have symbol domain. He doesn't have domain implication. We know he's able to recognize seemingly all of those phenomena, but he doesn't seem to have them. Like I've used this analogy before when talking about Kashimo, but like, I can recognize how to do a backflip or what a backflip is. I cannot perform a backflip. So sure, Kashimo knows about RCT, he knows about domain implication, he probably knows about symbol domain, he knows Hollow Wicker Basket, but he can't perform any of those things. Well, no, he can perform Hollow Wicker Basket, but he can't perform domain amp, symbol domain, or domain of his own, apparently. Bro just doesn't have that in his arsenal, which is very, very unfortunate. So Unlimited Void, hard banned from the table. But then we run into the second big issue, which is the Infinity. Kashimo can't get through that, like, at all, unless you start game theorizing. Now, the electromagnetic waves are the one thing that throw a wrench into this, because if you think they're just light, and you think the light can bypass Satoru Gojo's Infinity, then Gojo may be cooked, if it lands anywhere lethal, and if it lands in the first place. Because, once again, the big issue with Kashimo is that we never actually see them land on anybody, and we don't know if the Infinity wouldn't stop them. Because presumably it would, considering they're infused with cursed energy and they are likely a threat to Satoru Gojo's life. And thusly, the Infinity would just block it. And block everything else Kashimo has to offer. Because Kashimo has nothing else to offer but those electric attacks. And none of them would land because of the Infinity. And notably, Kashimo... this is going to sound awful. Due to the lack of domain implication, Kashimo can do nothing if Gojo stands in his face and charges the Hollow Purple. Literally nothing. Like straight up nothing. Like, he could just stand there and charge Hollow Purple, and Kashimo's only hope would be to dodge it. Because, without domain implication, and without any ability to touch Gojo, Kashimo can't even place charges. Like, not a single one of those charges can actually be placed on Gojo. Because, what do those charges require? Physical contact with something. And unless you want to argue that maybe Kashimo can land hits on the Infinity itself, like he can punch the Infinity, and then that would leave charges on Gojo. His Infinity, like that's like it would land on his ability, and even then, say the can't miss attack does pop off, right? Say the lightning bolt does tweak out and reach straight for Gojo and try to tickle his toe. Yeah, it wouldn't do anything because it wouldn't be able to breach the Infinity. Like it would probably just stand there. Or, like, be force static. It'd probably be, like, a connecting line between the two of them. But wouldn't actually do any damage to Gojo. Wouldn't do anything at all. And once again, Gojo should just have more power, more speed, and better abilities. All it takes is one blue punch to the chest, and Kashimo's cooked. Remember, the moment he activates Mythical Phantom Beast Amber, he's already on a time limit. His flesh has already started collapsing. There's nothing else bro can do from that. So the moment he does that against Gojo, Gojo could kind of... This is going to sound so bad. He could literally just fly into the air and wait for Kashimo to perish. That sounds awful, and it sounds cowardly, and you're absolutely right. Gojo would never do that in character, but that's the thing. That's how easy it would be to beat Kashimo. Kashimo would be firing electromagnetic waves, and they probably wouldn't do anything. He could be firing out bolts left and right. Let's say he has unlimited bolts for some reason. Let's just give Kashimo a buff like that. They would do nothing, because they never reach Gojo, and they never have a tag to be placed. The screams, the sonic attacks, you really think Gojo's going to fall to screams? Screams that, once again, a super giga crazy damage Sukuna was like, kind of loud. And Sukuna doesn't have the Infinity, which Gojo does. Which means that Gojo wouldn't even have to deal with any of the repercussions of that. Even, in fact, we've seen Gojo be attacked by sound-based abilities before in the bugs that Jogo released, and they did nothing. And they exploded afterwards. Nothing about Kashimo's sound exploded. They kind of just were sound. And Sukuna said they were kind of loud. That doesn't really mean anything for Kashimo's attack potency, or what it would do against Gojo if it were to land. But oh wait, it won't land because of the Infinity. And what happens when Gojo unleashes an unlimited hollow against Kashimo? What happens when Gojo hits Kashimo with 15 blue punches? What happens when Kashimo gets slammed in the chest with a black flash? Like, that's the thing. There's nothing. There's genuinely... You would have to make meme arguments. Not necessarily meme arguments. The electromagnetic wave thing may not be a meme argument, just because, like, well, you know, it's light. And maybe since we can see Gojo and characters can perceive Gojo, maybe the light would reach him? But the thing is, it's still infused with cursed energy, and a Gojo from like 10 years ago was like, oh yeah, by the way, like I can kind of just adapt to anything and everything. The infinity is auto-adjusting, so it'll just deal with things according to their threat level. And the electromagnetic waves, considering they are still dangerous and they're coming from Kashimo and they're formed of Kashimo's cursed energy, they definitely still be considered a threat, and they definitely still be blocked. If Sukuna's imperceptible, unreadable, insane, crazy technique is unable to be blocked or, well, no, unable to pierce through the infinity until it's literally cutting space itself, I don't think anything Kashimo does stands up to that caliber. Nothing. Nothing bro has is leading to that level. That level of dangerousness. To the point where I just don't see a win con for bro. You would have to, here's the thing, you would have to stack meme arguments and hope, which would in this case be cope. You would have to say that, okay, well, Kashimo Hajime is faster than Gojo, meaning Gojo would never land a hit on him, based on the fact that Kashimo was able to react to Spatial Slash while Gojo didn't. Ignore any contradictions with that. Ignore the fact that Gojo just was not warned about it. Ignore the fact that Kashimo dodged it, quote unquote, when he still lost a piece of his hand. Ignore anything that has to do with the fact that Kashimo was struggling to tag a super crazy Omega fatigued, crazy damaged 20-finger Maguna, while Gojo is able to keep pace and sometimes outspeed that Maguna. Forget all that. Just say Kashimo's faster. And then say the electromagnetic waves will transcend the infinity. Because a lot of people believe lightspeed stuff will get through the infinity. There you go. That's it. Until Gojo starts using RCT. Because then he just regenerates it. That's the thing. If he just sits there and regens throughout everything that Kashimo does, and then when he gets bored, activates Unlimited Hollow, Kashimo's cooked. Unless you want to tell me that Kashimo's faster than 20-finger Sukuna, which you can't. Especially if you think that all the Sukunas are uniform, right? This is a big thing. If you think that every single Sukuna is uniform, that 20-finger Sukuna in Yuji's body would be equivalent physically to 20-finger Sukuna in Megami's body, which would be equivalent to 20-finger Sukuna in his hand body. You think all of them are equal, because they're all 20-finger Sukuna, which seems to be the common community consensus, no matter how much I disagree on that. That seems to be the common community consensus. The moment Sukuna got healed and incarnated back into his true body form, if you think those two are equal, well, Kashimo never lands a hit on him. Which would mean by proxy, since Gojo's able to go somewhat relative with 20-finger Maguna, if not outpace him a couple times, depending on Maguna's mood, Kashimo would just never be able to land a hit on Gojo. Like, at all. He would just consistently be getting bullied and toyed around with. And heck, once again, remember, Sukuna was getting thrown around in the middle of domain clashes by telekinesis. What stops Gojo from doing the same thing against Kashimo? Just ripping him off the ground with blue and just throwing him somewhere. And then Kashimo runs back at him and he gets thrown again. And he runs back at him and he gets thrown again. He fires electromagnetic waves, it gets weaved, and then he gets thrown again. Once again, I just don't see it. I don't see the vision for Kashimo. To the point where I did this battle because a friend asked me to. Because they really like Kashimo. And I really like Kashimo. But this is like, you can make solid arguments for Kashimo against almost every other character in the series. You can make solid arguments for him against Kenjaku. You can make solid arguments for him against Yuta. You can make solid arguments for him against Maki, Toji, and so on. So you can make so many different solid arguments. Especially, heck, with base Kashimo alone, you could very easily argue still, to this day, that base Kashimo alone, not to talk of Mythical Phantom Beast Amber Kashimo, is still a top 10 character. Mythical Phantom Beast Amber may even be top 5. May be able to push top 3, depending on how you argue certain things and you throw narrative and stuff in like that. But against Gojo in particular, the matchup's so bad because Kashimo has nothing to turn off the main thing that could literally let Gojo go to sleep in front of Kashimo and have no issue with it. Unless you make some meme arguments about them electromagnetic waves and nothing is working. Nothing. And here's the thing, the electromagnetic waves, I kind of don't see the vision on them, but I can kind of see the vision. But would they land though? Would they land and would they do enough damage to Gojo that he couldn't recover? Like, maybe if the electromagnetic wave gets big enough that it covers the entire area and, like, it just vaporizes Gojo. Let's say Gojo just stands there and face tanks it for whatever reason. He doesn't even try to dodge it. And then his whole body gets vaporized and atomized by the electromagnetic wave. Then, boom! Boom! He wins. But other than that, there's nothing. There's nothing. The bolts would never land because he'd never be able to place the charges because of the infinity. The electromagnetic screams would never land because, you know, their screams and their speech and their sound is so thusly they wouldn't bypass the infinity. Kashimo's regular punches wouldn't be able to do anything because they'd never be able to bypass the infinity. He doesn't have domain implication to bypass the infinity. None of his techniques would bypass the infinity, and thusly the infinity kind of just makes Kashimo completely worthless in this battle. He may be the strongest of the Edo, but it's not enough against the strongest of the modern day. Kashimo's and like this is kind of just a universal thing for Gojo, like not even just in his own verse, but cross verse. He kind of just is a matchup check. Do you have the ability to turn off other abilities? If so, you can do work against Gojo. You can whip some things out against him. You can whip it up in the kitchen a little bit, especially if your ability negation is passive or can be stacked with non-ability negation. Like Suguna stacks domain implication with his Malevolent Shrine, using the domain, which is imbued with the technique, and then using domain implication on top of that in order to attack Gojo while he's inside his domain. That's some ability stacking that allows for a good match against Gojo. But Kashimo just doesn't have that. Unless it gets retroactively confirmed that he has domain implication, and you use that argument about the dismantle for the whole speed issue that Kashimo would have against Gojo, there's nothing Kashimo can do. He can't be the second strongest in the verse, because he literally can't even touch the real second strongest. And that's very, very unfortunate. And I think, like, people are still having copium for Gojo to come back, but I think it's basically impossible to even hope we're going to get any more Kashimo stuff retroactively or anything like that. I don't think, unless it's revealed sometime in like another data book drop that he has domain amplification and you start giving him those kind of weird funky speed arguments, he can't beat Gojo. He realistically just can't. He's a blue victim, a red victim, definitely a purple victim, and once again, this is all under the assumption that I ban Unlimited Void. If I don't ban Unlimited Void, Kashimo gets low diff within the first 15 seconds. Because if Kashimo did just pull up, at the end of the Suguna fight, Gojo wouldn't be able to Unlimited Void. That's the safest option. But any other time, if Gojo just has his brain back, boom, Unlimited Void and Kashimo loses. Hollow Wicker Basket is not better than Domain Implication. It is not stopping Unlimited Void. If he can even react in time to activate that bad boy. Same thing with any Soul Domain. Same thing with any sort of domain amplification. It's just a bad matchup. It's just a straight bad matchup. Kashimo need more abilities, or he needed to have some confirmation that he could bypass the Infinity. Without that, without any abilities to do otherwise, Kashimo Hajime unfortunately falls short against the strongest sorcerer of today. Honestly, he could probably do what Gojo could probably do to Kashimo what he did to Hanami and just flex Infinity. Flex his aura to the point where Kashimo can't escape and just eventually crush him as Kashimo's flesh degrades and he's unable to do anything against Gojo. That's how bad this matchup is. And I'm sorry, my fellow Kashimo fans, but there's just no way for our boy to win this one. However, that's what I think. Please, what you guys think in the comment section down below. Do you guys think I'm wrong? Do you think there's some way Kashimo can pull out a dub against Satoru Gojo? Maybe with the meme arguments, with other arguments, anything like that? Do you guys think I'm slopping off Gojo too much? Do you think he doesn't actually scale at all to 20 finger Suguna? Because he said he was holding back, meaning Suguna was holding back to like 1 finger levels in terms of everything. Do you think finger scaling is even valid? Please leave all your thoughts on this battle in the comment section down below. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, please leave Infinite Lightning in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for watching. Please remember to leave a like, share, comment, and subscribe, and make sure you hit that notification bell so you do not miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also, I do have a pop-up Patreon down below where you can support me for as low as $1 a month to get things like exclusive videos, early content, and more. You also now become a member of the channel for as low as $3 a month to get the same perks and more. So those perks will include the live reaction to the very next chapter of Jujutsu Kaisen. Now, thank you so much for watching once again, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is Dagger the Pencil, writing off. I'd like to give a thank you to our $3 members, Recliner Plays, Red Wolf 4765, Greyhound, and Akid's Void. And I'd like to give another thank you to our $5 patrons, Victor, Sean, Midnight Gemlord, Kevin, Demix LND, and Igneal. And I'd like to give a chunky old thank you to our $7 member, Autumn's Morning Lazo. And I'd like to give another chunka thank you to our $10 patrons, Robbie Uchiha, Joaquin, Idemokai, and China Doll 09. I'd like to give a tractor thank you to our $25 member, Alex Ice Rose. I'd like to give another giga gargantuan thank you to our $25 patron, Calvin Elder.